I'm Josh Totten Greenwood. I teach over at South. Apologies, I have my phone up here. We have a baby coming this week, so if I run out of here, that's why. But I tackled student engagement, and James, thank you for helping me. If we go to the next slide.
Thank you for doing my intro.
Do you have an intro? Go ahead.
No, you're good. You covered it.
All right. So the realities of a contemporary classroom in Nashville, we all know. We've been talking about it all day. There's definitely the bell curve is expanding. We've always had our high flyers, our very academic kids. We've always had our kids that are not so academic. That group in between is what I see a lot more of in my classroom, and that's changed over just the past 10 years that I've been around here. So I wanted to, as I was tackling this question, I wanted to figure out what was going on. And some of my coworkers will just say, oh, the kids are not what they used to be, and they're not as smart as they used to be and all that. So I think as educators, we really need to think, what is smart? We have that kid that might be able to take apart a computer and put it back together again, but then fails the math test. So I'm not sure that we're evolving as quickly as our students are evolving. And I don't always know what's going on. I oftentimes have to Google things they say to figure out what it means, which makes me feel very old, but also makes me feel motivated, like I'm trying to reach them. So we've got different students. We've talked about the ELL students. They've had the interruption in learning. I had a student this past year who hadn't been in a school for 2 years. That's a whole different set of circumstances that we didn't talk about in teacher school when I went to teacher school. So the action research, I love it. We get here because it's what can we do right now and what changes can we make. So I was really excited to be part of this. I had done grad school and had kids and all that, so I could never be part of it, and I finally was excited to be here. But then came the pressure of, well, what do you do? And as Gary and James and Pat were saying, we've got all these great things that have happened and have been implemented, then the pressure comes on, like, oh man, what am I going to look at? So I bounced a lot of ideas off of coworkers and a lot of ideas off of other people in the group, and this is kind of where I ended up. So I teach all freshmen, and it's essentially a room full of puppies every day. And so this was the best puppy picture I could find. My puppies don't look like this, though. They're not looking. If you could do the next slide, this is what my puppies look like. They're great kids, but they just come with a lot of stuff, all the stuff we've been talking about today. So this is a much more accurate depiction of the puppies that I see. So I talked to some coworkers, and I really reflected on it, and the kids in my classroom that sit there and they just want to be on their phone, or they just want to fight with me, and they don't want to take their head off the desk, and they refuse to do work. It's not the average, I've got that good kid who's having a bad day. It's this is my Alamo. This is my line in the sand. I am not doing a thing. And I have got these kids after 8, 9, 10 years of school. And it's like I'm the first one that ever asked them to do something. And it's a riot because they go to all their classes and every teacher feels the same. And they're like, I just had that fight last block with the same kid. So these are the kids. I wanted to figure out what was going on with them. So I figured I would just ask them. Because high school kids, being incredibly honest, will tell you. So that's what I did. So we know that grading has changed. We know that some of our kids are not in a healthy place when they arrive to us. These are all things that we've talked about all day, we've talked about before. So I could just skip through my slides, which is great. So my number one goal is to help my students. And I've been in Nashville long enough to know that if I sat up here and said, oh, I need a couple $1 million, or I need these resources, or we need these big building level changes, those are all great, and I would love to inspire those. But my number one focus was what can I do in my classroom to reach these kids tomorrow. Maybe the next one. So we had a lot of existing literature out there, and it's been a while since I've done grad school. So it's like going on a run after you haven't done it for a year. Like it takes a little bit to get back into the swing of things. But there's some great stuff out there, and I found the research is having trouble keeping up with how fast the dynamics of the modern classroom are changing. Once the people want to study Fortnite and how that's impacting a generation of kids, the kids aren't playing Fortnite anymore. So it's just moving very quickly. That being said, we also have a connected world that wasn't necessarily there when I was in teacher school. So I can read studies on the growth mindset in China and immigrants in Germany, and that wasn't really something I could dig through the library and do in the past. So there was really some great stuff out there. There's no clear reason, there's no clear impetus for a kid to be engaged. There's a lot of stuff out there, and that's what I was looking at. I was looking at student engagement, which has been great, because we started with elementary school, then we went to middle school, and now we're here at the high school. And some of us are saying the exact same thing all day, and some of it's different. But it makes sense because the students are individuals, so therefore what motivates them and what engages them is obviously going to be different. And this is the teacher challenge as we sit there with a diverse classroom. If we do the next one. So what do we have? Well, the learning institution, and this is kind of how I broke it out, I coded it as I went through. We have different kind of roles and responsibilities out there in the research. And we obviously know the institution. The physical place is very, very important, as we just discussed with the middle school, right? I was reminiscing with Gary when we did the climate survey back when Connie was here, Connie Brown, and she had a belly laugh when she realized that we built some of these high school facilities without consulting an educational kind of buildings, facility type of person. And I wasn't around for that, and I'm sure if that was available, they would have. But when we have classrooms that are not conducive to learning, we're like, how did that get built? Like, why didn't someone say, this doesn't make sense? So we have stuff like that. And then we have that we need expert educators, which we already heard about today. A teacher that feels good, a teacher that feels respected, that is content, that's going to correlate to the classroom as well. And we know that. We know that. They're doing a great thing, an interesting thing in Spain, where they're paying educators to do professional development. So they say, what you do is fine, but if you want to take this on, if you want to take this risk, we're going to go ahead and give you a stipend. And it seems to be working. But there's a lot of stuff there. But ultimately, we are the school, and when the kids arrive, we only have control over so much. I mean, I have my 93 students, and I have them for 90 days, 85 to 90 minutes. That's not a lot. That's not a lot. So there's this whole other set of stuff, and they're called the non-institutional factors. And that's the stuff they come in with. That's the stuff outside of the classroom. And as educators, we know that's there, and we haven't done a great job evolving to accepting that. I mean, when it comes to content delivery, when it comes to me talking about history, sometimes that's the last priority with a student. And the community who, as we heard today, rely on their experience when they were in school, right? And that's changed so much since that's happened to anyone who even graduated 5 years ago. The community sometimes always doesn't understand that we are not just delivering content like teachers once were. We are those counselors. We're that trusted adult. We're that, for some kids, we're that continuity. We're that stable, safe place. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and the research really hits on the fact that we need to get these kids in a spot where they can learn if we expect them to learn. And then there's some great research actually coming out of Germany on their Turkish students and the immigrants, and how we have to put, if we have an immigrant community, we have to just put resources into it. And this is an interesting thing. When I was in Germany in 2007, I was working with a teacher group on a Goethe grant, and the teachers say, well, our immigrants are ruining our schools. And just in the past 10 years, this has completely changed. And they say, well, our immigrants need more resources. Rather than just saying they're ruining our schools, or they're not as smart as the other kids, and they're not doing what they need to do, it's understanding why they're not doing that. Which, if you were to walk around some of our buildings, you hear the same thing from the staff members. Oh, these kids aren't as smart. Oh, they don't do homework like they used to. Rather than, oh, why is this happening, right? And we heard this today. When you guys put up the graphic that said behavior as communication, rather than something that needs to be corrected, how are we reading what these kids are doing, right? Or not doing in some cases. So, I didn't want to get into politics. I just wanted to look at what I could do with my kids. I don't even talk about immigration, big picture stuff, right? What we know is that there's a hierarchy of needs. Anyone that went to any liberal arts school or went through high school, you know Maslow, right? If the kids on the bottom are hungry, they don't care about the Renaissance or the Enlightenment because they're hungry, right? So we have to deal, and we know that. We have the food closet, we have the food pantries, and we have the clothes closets. I mean, we know that these are the things that our kids are coming in with. So when I looked at it, this self-efficacy thing I thought was really great. When the kids are comfortable, when they feel they can do it, then they have the opportunity to do it. But until we get them there, we can't be surprised when they're not succeeding. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and the modern institution for education needs to allow this stuff to happen, right? So we need the social services, but we also have to give them the ability, and this is what they talk here, to create and take opportunities and enhance their student self-belief, right? And where did we learn that? Most of us learned that from our parents, just like we learn how to take notes, just like we learn how to read. That's not happening for a lot of our students. They're not getting built up at home, right? And I looked at my own classroom through this, and this is action research. I said, man, what am I doing to identify these kids and their strengths and build them up rather than break them down? And say, no, don't do that anymore. Next one. So through the teachers' leaders and Gary's expertise pointed me towards Francine Jacobs out of Tufts, and she worked in Massachusetts, and she worked with at-risk families. So this is our demographic right here. And where I ended up is part number one of her five-tiered approach, which is simply, what does this community need? And my classroom is my community, so that's what I hopped into. And I said, I've got a survey, and I've done this survey at the end of class, so I beefed it up a little bit. I was going to do more than just read through and see how I did that semester. I was going to tabulate that data a little more. I tried to boil down or water down some of the vocab that I knew my students weren't going to understand. I just tried to make it understandable and unintimidating. And we went through that. I proofed it with coworkers. I proofed it with this group. And it was great. I knew I took a big bite. I knew I wasn't going to be able to go through all of it, but I figured, see what I could find, see if there's anything there. My part one was about school. We don't need to go, no. Part two is about the individual, and part three was about my class specifically. So there's obviously a ton. It was coded, it was transcribed, all that good stuff. None of this would be publishable at this point. It would need validity measures. It would need more longitudinal stuff. We heard some great projects today that have been going on 2-3 years. Mine's nowhere near that. I am at the very, very beginning. It's a very small sample size. It was literally just my students. And the best example is this child in human development. The National Institute put out a survey, and they had 15 questions and the scale of what I think about school. I just asked my kids, do you like school? I mean, I just tried to, let's just get it simple. I don't have 15 questions to get there. So I've got some highlights to share of what I came up with. We have, do you like school? Right? So as an educator, you're a little worried about this 16%. Now, it's not elementary school, so we kind of, in high school land, we expect that it's not their favorite place to be every day. That being said, it's interesting to hear, especially at looking at some of the middle school data that you all presented, that my foundations level, which would be our lowest level academic students, they're the ones who like school the most. And I just kind of looked at that class and I said, well, sometimes they don't act like it. But I mean, it's a thing. So I think this is interesting. I would love to get into this more, and follow up with that. If we can do the next one. Now, we obviously have teenagers being teens, and some of the answers are just, they're just what, in a 14-year-old mind, it's hilarious or it makes sense. So where will you be in 5 years? I'll be alive. How do you do that? Not die. Okay, thanks. Moving on. So we do have some of those, just teens being teens. And that's in there, but that's okay. So the number one theme that popped up time and time again was mental health, stress. And I was surprised because my students at 14 years old were very aware of this. And this is on their radar every single day. And the numbers back it up. I mean, 16% identified this as an area the school could help them. The largest issue at 26%. And this is a qualitative survey, so there's not something to circle. They have to come up with this and write this down on their own. There's 24 references. The references, and I track that because the references are for a variety of questions. When I ask, how are you doing in class? And they say, my mental health is bad. Something's going on there. Something's going on. So I was just kind of blown away by that. And it's interesting, too, because they're now aware of it. They're hearing about it in middle school, as we've heard today. They're hearing about it in elementary school. And we actually did a day of mindfulness for the second year in a row. So it's something they hear about at the high school as well. So I think it's good that we're keeping track of that and we're keeping up with that. I also had some kids, specifically in my honors class, that were stressed about things moving too quickly. And I thought that was interesting. I wouldn't expect that at the higher level. I would expect it at the lower level. But I really got it at the higher level. So, that might be something with how we do it operationally and how we put them there, how they can pick. for teacher recommendations and prerequisites. And I teach history, so that's a little different than a math class per se. School value, a lot of my kids, which I was pleased to see, found value in high school. They said, I want to do X, Y, Z down the road, and I have to do well in school to get there. So they feel it's important, but then when you look at them with the head on the desk and whatnot, you know, sometimes the actions, they don't connect. So this is what I wanted to get at, and I really wanted to figure out what they were thinking. If we could do the next one. We definitely had some stuff, and I broke it up as to in school and then my class individually. So I wanted to share some of the qualitative results. When was the last time you recall trying hard in a class or an assignment? And I had, as you can see, some kids that can't recall. And I mean, I don't need to read all these to you. You all can read. That's just kind of insulting. But when we got down to my foundations levels kids, and 1 in 4 couldn't remember or said they never tried, that's concerning. And I'm not sure what to do with that, because 90% of the larger group didn't say that. So that's clearly an area where there needs to be some intervention. We have a group of kids and they're either disenfranchised or they've given up, all of which wouldn't be good for us, right? When I have 2/3 that are not able to identify strength of their own academically, I mean, you worry about the well-being of that kid and whether they've been beaten down, they just give up. And they'll say, I'm not good at math, man. I can't write, I can't read. That's not what we're looking for out of our students. Lots of kids said they could be better students. They knew what they needed to do. But when I asked them specifically what the teacher could do to help them, I had 30% that didn't know. So that was kind of concerning to me. Are they not aware of how they learn? I mean, I'm 37 and I'm still trying to figure out how I best learn. So I don't know what I can do as an individual or what we can do as an institution to help them identify how they can learn. But that might be something we need to look at. And then I thought this was very interesting. Vaping came up a lot. And 25% of the responses when I said, hey, what school rule do we need? They named things that we already had. So they're either freshmen and they don't know that we have that rule, or that we're not doing a very good job enforcing that rule. I mean, when kids say we need a vaping rule, like, vaping's not allowed. There's a rule there. I mean, what's going on? And that came up several times. So that's definitely on the freshman mind. Now the student takeaway, they were amazingly aware. I was blown away. They referenced procrastination. They said we got to do our work. They knew what they needed to do. Now again, doing it, that's a whole nother battle. But there was a lot of stuff in there. They understood they need better work habits. And again, when I go over note-taking with my students, I think about where I learned note-taking and good study skills and doing things like reading without the TV on. That was my parents. And I'm not sure all my students have that. So as educators, we need to be cognizant of that. And don't just say, hey guys, listen, you need to do a better job reading. Why can't you study? Teach them how to do that, because no one else is doing it. They also, as I wrote, naively optimistic. 70% of the kids said, my grade will go up Q4. Now, any educator knows May and June are not when grades are necessarily going up, when it's 80 degrees out and, all the end of the year stuff, especially in the high school. So, some of that's probably being a freshman. Our system with independence and accountability, sometimes that's not a strong suit that we have. So these are the type of things I would love to further investigate. What institutional changes and whatnot can we do there? So obviously at qualitative, you get those high school gems. So I put up a couple questions, and I did 30 questions, which again was way too much. But I'm looking for information. I'm looking where to go next. So that was, I start broad and then we narrow. So when we look at some of these, they're good. You get the high school kids. Why do you come to school? To see my boob. That means boyfriend. I looked it up. To get away from my parents, you get that basic stuff. But then you get this amazing one, that maybe you're not expecting anything to happen on a normal school day, but it could surprise you how many interesting things you can learn. And that's from someone that's new to this country. And I know because she followed up with me to make sure I could understand what she had written down. And even though it was anonymous. And so that's her perception of it. Like, I want to come every day because there might be something new. That's great. If I could clone that. What's the largest issue at Nashville High School South? Well, you got vaping, drugs, jewels, the usual. Students do whatever they want. Teachers don't care, right? This last one worried me. The people suck, the teachers are biased. School nowadays care more about passing and good grades than taking care of students' mental health. So this type of stuff, I mean, when you read that, you wish there was a name on the paper so you could reach out and talk to that kid. But again, high school kids, very honest, very honest. What rule or policy could the school add to help you? And I love the one about cell phones. Honestly, I'd hate that, but I think I'd do better if there were no phones. Right? We know about the start time of high school and stuff like that. So the kids are in tune to this. It was impressive to see what we found there. What could the school do to help the students? Demand more effort? Talk to students and hear what they have to say? Look into their personal background to make sure they're living under safe conditions? I mean, these are unsolicited. It's not check a box here. It's literally, what could we do to help you? Make sure I'm living in a safe situation? That's not a kid that really cares about my test. You know what I'm saying? So when we get to rules, I thought it was interesting. I had this one. If a student is late, mark it and give them a 0. That's curious. That came from the class where all the students are late all the time. So someone earlier had said, they're asking for that structure. They're asking for those parameters, those guidelines, and maybe they're not getting them at home. So something like this. Doing nothing in class, suspension, or equals a suspension because students learn everything as consequences, right? They are asking for that structure. They are looking for that help. This might be the most stable part of their day. So I thought it was very interesting, skipping kid because their class sucks or they need help and they're not getting the help they need. I mean, I left the wrong spelling of "there" in there because these are actual quotes. This kid is basically telling me he skips class because he's not getting help. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't go to math class because he doesn't know how to do the math. So what are we doing to reach those kids? And again, I'm not looking for funding to go into that kid's, but I see this kid every day. So what can I do for them? What could the school do to help the students, right? We already
went
did.
ahead
Sorry.
and went back, yeah.
Oh, my bad. Okay. So the takeaways for my course, right? And this is action research. So 30% of my students did not deem world studies important. Well, it's a hard sell. History class for a 14-year-old, but I'm going to sell the heck out of that thing in the fall. I'll tell you that much, right? Next, 24% thought I was not excited. I'm going to be so excited. Look out, right? Just like the 15% that felt I was not getting along with them, I'm going to be so happy. And so much coffee, they're going to be disgusted with me. The grading, the 26% of grading, and part of this I know is our Aspen program. Sometimes when a kid, let's say they have a 1.88 and they need a 2 to pass, the program, they just see an F. That's very confusing when I see what the kids say. So I know some of that's not me, but I can explain it better. I have so many parents who say, I don't know what the grade is. I don't know how the computer thing works. Or the kids that say, I can't figure it out. So I need to do a better job of that. And this is action research. This is me. Okay. This is a success, though, because I got knowledge of my learners, and I have some immediate actions that are going to make the experience in my class better. So future research, there's a ton out there. There's so much. And if we were going to run a longitudinal study, if we were going to give this to some grad students, we could really get some good stuff, especially when you break things up into the levels of classes like I did for that first question. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I thought the ELL and the immigration students, I thought that their perceptions of how we do things was phenomenal. There's some rich stuff there. And then my unconventional learner, we all struggle, and we've heard about it all day. I asked a student if she comes to school, or if he comes to school, I don't know. And they said, yes, I try to come to school, but sometimes I have to stay home and take care of people. So in my world, does this person get in trouble for not coming to school? Does this person not get a good grade because they missed the content? What are we doing to reach this 14-year-old that has to stay home to take care of people? And they didn't specify if they're translating for a doctor, if it's younger siblings, if it's older, grandparents. We don't know. And when I look around the room, I don't know. But what are we doing as a staff, as an educational institution to reach those kids? So then, obviously, I do this whole thing. And one of my coworkers gets this old Rizzo form out from the back of their filing cabinet. And this is essentially what I had just toiled over for months. And it's the Form B, the Student Feedback Survey, grades 7 to 12. And apparently around 2000, no one could actually put a date on it. This is what they used as part of the evaluation process for staff. And they gave this to students. And then the administrators gave it to students, then they collected it, and this was part of the teacher evaluation. And it pretty much nails on everything I was looking for. The teacher, are you communicating? Are we grading effectively? Are we making those connections? And then the student, are they trying? Are they responsible? Their behavior and attendance and whatnot. And then at the end, what you liked about this course and what we can improve. So this bad Larry, I put into a Google form, and all the kids are going to get this at the end of quarter 4 because the Rizzo machine doesn't work anymore. But yeah, we got it. So.
Oversee it does.
Oh, perfect. And I think that's it. Yeah. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, it's just a nice recap. Put a pin in our elementary motivation, middle school, all the way up to high school. So some of the same themes, some things very different.